Good afternoon, everybody. We will get started in just a moment, giving some people some time to come into the webinar space. I hope you are all well. Marvellous. Lovely to see you here. Very lovely. We will get started in just a moment. There we go. I think everybody that's coming in is in. If not, they will join us or catch us on the replay. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday afternoon. It is May 2023. How on earth did that happen? Welcome to this afternoon's safeguarding briefing hosted by me, Kate Young, who is the CEO of the Safeguarding Association. Welcome along to our 6 weekly briefing. Some ground rules for you as we move through, as always. Make sure you're somewhere quiet. Make sure that you've got earbuds in or headphones on. If you are, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on the replay, there may be some things that we're going to talk about today that you might not want little ears to hear. If you are here live, you have the opportunity to ask questions. And if you've ever been on any of my training before, you will know I love a question. So either use the chat function, or if you'd like to post anonymously, then you can use the Q&A function as well. So without further ado, who am I? For those of you who don't know me, like I say, my name is Kate Young. I have 25 odd years legal experience within and around the child protection arena. I now don't practice anymore. I predominantly support safeguarding leads in higher education institutions and FE establishments, and those providing apprenticeships, as well as doing lots of work as part of an improvement team with local authorities up and down the country. And my real passion is helping safeguarding leads, ideally as part of the Safeguarding Leaders Hub, where we do one-to-one support, lots of awareness sharing, and lots of space to come and ask questions as well. And we are specialists, if you don't know us, in working with 15 to 25-year-olds. It's a delightfully grey area. Really, really difficult for professionals who work in that arena, but for some reason my legal brain seems to really quite like working in that arena. So introductions done. What on earth has been going on since I last spoke to you? Well, there has been quite a lot. This is a snapshot. This is absolutely not absolutely everything that's been going on. We'd be here for a month of Sundays if I tried to give you everything that has been going on in the last few weeks. But I'm here to give you the headlines, and I'm here to give you some heads up of things that are heading down the path as well. Okay, so first of all, let's have a look around some guidance. As safeguarding professionals, guidance is our friend. It's something that we can use to really help us do the best by those young people we work with. The first bit is the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory, an amazing organisation, have released some new guidelines when the state is seeking to intervene with an unborn or a newborn baby. So the state being a local authority in essence. And they have been doing lots of work around how that is best achieved, how that is best done. This is really important guidance for anybody working where there are unborn or newborn babies and you are in and around the care sector. But I think it's really important for professionals who work with older teens, particularly older female teens, where they may be either pregnant or at risk of pregnancy and they're under 18. What often happens is that those who are under 18 and become new mums tend to have all the focus placed on the unborn or the newborn baby, often for very good reason. But the focus moves away from them, and they're often left really struggling to understand what's happening. And I do think it's really important that if you're a professional working in that space, that you understand what these guidelines are, because the chances are, as the professional, you are going to need to guide that new mum, and particularly if she's a teenage mum, around these guidelines, and to make sure that the local authority is actually doing what they are supposed to be doing, because it doesn't always happen, and there often needs to be some firm words to make sure that the new mum, particularly if she's a teen, is getting the support she needs to give her the best opportunity of raising her child. So that's the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory new guidelines. Take a look at those. All of these can be found, by the way, by typing into a well-known search engine. New guidance has been released following the regulation of supported accommodation for 16 and 17-year-olds. That follows a period of where accommodation was provided for these youngsters, but support wasn't always regulated. You may have seen in the press a lot of comments around unregulated accommodation for this age range. It's really, really difficult to find appropriate accommodation for 16 and 17-year-olds in any event. But there is now new guidance, and the applications are now being accepted as of April 2023. So last month, those who provide supported accommodation can apply to be regulated to continue providing that accommodation. Updated MAPA guidance. So this is where there are domestic abuse or high risk perpetrators about. And the last bit of guidance to flag for you is Research in Practice, which is another phenomenal organisation who do a lot around the social work world. They've published new principles for dealing with child exploitation and extra-familial harm. Well worth a look. They do lots and lots of really good work. They're definitely a point of reference for me. And these new principles are guiding points for dealing with child exploitation. It's something that's not going away. It's very, very prevalent. And I know is coming up a lot around the immigration of and the trafficking of young people as well. So good point to go and have a look at that. So that's the headline guidance. Like I say, it's absolutely not every single bit of guidance that's been released, but it's headline guidance for you to be aware of. So let's have a look at some of the reports that have come about. Baroness Casey's report into the police has been published. I don't intend to go into detail on that. Pretty much every broadsheet and tabloid press has published something in relation to those particular findings. They are shocking to some, not so shocking to others. But they definitely shine a light on things that have been ongoing. Children's Commissioner has published a report into child strip searches. So you may recall that there was a serious case review into, or certainly a learning review into Child Q, who was the young girl who was strip searched without an appropriate adult. Horrific set of circumstances for her, absolutely horrific set of circumstances. So there was an investigation. The Children's Commissioner has had a deeper look at this. Really worrying is that the Children's Commissioner's research has found that 52% of searches have happened without an appropriate adult being present, or to be more specific, has happened without there being a record of there being an appropriate adult present. So some might have had an appropriate adult present, but there was certainly no record in those 52% of searches that there was an actual record of an appropriate adult being present. Ofcom have been looking again into children's online behaviour. They have published, there are actually two reports, so one into the behaviour of children and one around their parents. So again, well-known search engine, and you will be able to find that report if you would like more information on it. There has been a second report by the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel into children with disabilities. There's likely to be a raft of responses in relation to this. When those come about, I'll probably mention them on another briefing, but be aware that this is now definitely being looked at. There's been long worries about how children with disabilities were being treated and whether or not they were receiving the appropriate safeguards. And so now we have this second report into this. And lastly, in terms of reports, the IWF has published their latest report. The IWF being the Internet Watch Foundation. They publish a report fairly frequently, and they have come up with their latest report here. There has been an increase in some of the behaviour online. So there's been a significant increase in the number of imagery containing boys, less so of the imagery in relation to girls. The other area is that there has been, I'm just looking for the actual figures and they seem to have disappeared. There we go, looking on my other screen for them. So we have a number of videos, the number of children being groomed has increased. So yeah, so the figure, I knew it was a big figure. It's 137% increase in the number of images of boys compared to last year, which is an enormous number there for you. And this was out of 375,230 reports assessed in 2022. And of that, the most severe is category A, and there were just over 51,000 images of category A reports. And the increase is about 4% year on year. So from 2021 to 2022. So it's a growing problem. But they do produce a snapshot report, really important. The age, they go from 0 to 18. So there are lots and lots of details within those as well for you. So again, snapshot into some of the reports that are available for you. So what about some legal updates? Well, we're going to concentrate on 3 pieces of legislation because these are all before the House of Lords at the moment. The first one is the Online Safety Bill. Remember, this is the flagship piece of legislation from the government around internet safety. This is now at committee stage in the House of Lords, and I'm not expecting much progress until at least the end of May, when it will have been hopefully thoroughly scrutinised by the House of Lords, and then it will go on to the next stage. The second piece of legislation is the Illegal Migration Bill. Again, if you're working particularly around the world of immigration or coming across young people who are around this is, I don't like this piece of legislation at all. I genuinely don't like it. I think it's an abhorrent piece of legislation, but it is making its way through Parliament. It has its second reading in the House of Lords on the 10th of May. We'll see what the House of Lords make of it, and whether or not they have lots and lots of changes, or whether they cause particular problems for the government in trying to get this through. But that is on its second reading in the House of Lords. The third piece to mention is protection from sex-based harassment. We already have protection from harassment, but this is very specific, and is making its way through the House of Lords again, and that's got its second reading. It's had its first reading. We're awaiting a date for its second reading in the House of Lords. And as soon as we know more, if these have moved on by the time we come to our next briefing, then I will let you know. The chances are we may have dates for further progress by the time we meet again in 6 weeks. But again, I will let you know. So those are the headline pieces of legislation. But there is one thing that I do want to mention, because it keeps coming up. And I do think it's important that we mention it as part of our briefing. And it is this. So mandatory reporting of child abuse has been discussed for a considerable amount of time. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse made its final report at the back end of last year, and it recommended there be mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse by those who work with children. And we've had the Home Secretary saying she's absolutely committed to making this mandatory. Now, this, like I said, this conversation has been ongoing for a significant amount of time. It's not new. We have mandatory reporting of things like female genital mutilation in certain circumstances, depending on the profession. And there are obligations within keeping children safe in education and working together to safeguard children around reporting and sharing of information. That's different in terms of the sanctions that are potentially on the cards for mandatory reporting. But I do think it's important to remind ourselves that this has already been on the table at Parliament. So Baroness Gray-Thompson, Tanni Gray-Thompson, the elite Paralympian, that's the word I'm looking for, phenomenal woman, in July last year introduced a bill around mandatory reporting of child abuse. And this reached its second reading, and then it stopped. It's absolutely stopped. Now, her bill was around reporting where somebody was undertaking a regulated activity or was heavily involved with that child or responsible for the children. So fairly, it was broadish. I don't know what the Home Secretary is going to do in terms of making child sexual abuse reporting mandatory. I don't think, if I'm being brutally honest, I'm not sure it will make an enormous difference to prosecutions. We will have to watch this space to see what, if anything, is different, whether the Home Secretary remotions Baroness Gray-Thompson's bill, whether there's fresh legislation, or if nothing happens at all. We have a number of mechanisms in this country for reporting. We're definitely not in the French situation where reporting is mandatory. And I don't know how wide this would go, whether it would just be child sexual abuse or whether it would be wider than that. We'll have to watch and see what happens and what is motioned, and whether or not there is an appetite in Parliament for this to happen, because ultimately the bill and the final piece of legislation has to be workable, and has to make sure that children are at no greater risk of harm than they currently are. So definitely one to watch, and we will see what happens there. I'm not totally convinced it's going to happen inside this Parliament, but we will wait and see. And that is it, lovely people. That is a headline view at what is going on in the world of safeguarding. In terms of other updates, the Safeguarding Lead refresher training is available on the 16th of May. I also am running initial training on the 28th and 29th of June. It's a 2-day programme. So if you've got any new safeguarding leads, then it's both of these are open programmes. So they're available to anybody to come along if they are taking on the role of safeguarding lead. Remember that there is no difference as far as keeping children safe in education is concerned between safeguarding lead and deputy safeguarding or safeguarding officer. So be aware of that, but there are still some places, there aren't many, but there are still some places available on both of those programs. If you are a safeguarding lead and you are finding life just a little tough on your own, it happens. Often you are the only person dealing with that and everything sits on your shoulders, then our Leaders Hub is the place for you. We're accepting new members. There are umpteen opportunities for you to come and talk to me or to share with your fellow safeguarding leads. So if it's interesting to you, if you want more information, then please send me an email and let's have a conversation. I will be back in 6 weeks to share more updates with you. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.